Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining in. We've got Roxy and Fiona here today to talk about their amazing volunteer program, and they are going to kick off just this session with a little background information about themselves and their organization before we get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. We're super excited to be here. And thank you for joining. Ant is actually, I'm going to give you the inside track. We roped him in to be part of our core steering committee. And it was one of the ways that we've gotten a really committed volunteer crew. So my name's Roxy Davis. I've been surfing for 25 years, surf coaching for 20 years. I started a surf shop and surf school in Muizenberg, Cape Town. It has become the biggest surf shop in Africa. So we have over 100 coaches that are part of the team there. And my focus has always been, for 20 years, it was on mentorship and training of surf coaches. And then in 2018, Ant said to me, hey, this thing, surf therapy is really taking off worldwide. We really need to jump on board. And that's really how it started. So I'm a International Surfing Association course presenter and have my level 2 in surfing and stand-up paddleboarding. I'm also the only person in South Africa to have ever represented our country in all 3 surfing disciplines: longboard, shortboard, and stand-up paddleboarding. So we started in 2019 with the nonprofit organization that we founded called the Roxy Davis Foundation. And Fiona joined our team from day one, and Fiona can introduce herself, but she's been absolutely incredible and an integral part of the foundation and how we run. COVID and lockdown has actually brought us to this point where Fiona is now in a landlocked area. She works from Johannesburg. So she's inland, but she can still help us deliver surf therapy at the beach. So that's a bit about me, and I'm going to hand over to Fiona.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be part of this working group, and hopefully we'll see some more other groups in the future. So yes, like Roxy said, I joined August the 1st, 2019, and we hit the ground running because that's Roxy's style. My background has always been in NPO type work environment, so program management, all the non-governmental sort of angles of everything, the paperwork, the admin, all of that stuff. But what makes it more exciting to do all the paperwork, because that's not really exciting, is the impact that the project has. I also learned to surf through Roxy's surf school, mainly because my teenage boy was surfing and I wanted to spend time with him. So yes, probably been down on the beach for 10 years and then had to move inland last year. So I am doing it from afar with a lot of FOMO when I see all those photos. So Chris was saying earlier, she stalks everybody on Instagram. So I do the same thing. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So I'm just looking to see who we have here really quick. Okay, I was looking to see. So part of the reason I wanted to do our session today to talk about the volunteer program that you have kind of came from a conversation that I had with Parker Hansen about just his experience as a volunteer, and that kind of sprung into another conversation with Chris about, how do you create a program that's going to inspire your volunteers to show up, consistently, inspire inclusion of the volunteers, and how do they kind of have an influence on the program, and how do you, make sure that you speak a common language on and off the beach, so that your participants are safe. And I mean, obviously water safety, but also emotional safety. So those were some of the things that came out of some of those conversations. And so I guess it's, since especially Fiona, you guys you were there on day one, I guess share with me a little bit about, that maybe the first year of your program. Did you guys have this volunteer program in place before, from day one, or was that like an afterthought that came in?
So I'll just share with you a bit about 2019. We really hit the ground running. So it was all the admin and paperwork and stuff. We also had our sessions that we were running were really large sessions. So we would have, 20 or 30 surfers in a surf therapy session, and it would be a morning, and we would have like 70 or 80 volunteers down on the beach. So our group was just massive. And we would it was like, almost to start, it was this feeling of chaos and anxiety, because it was going, well, not only are we going to, fun and safety for our surfers, but now we have to manage the logistics of all these new volunteers. So 2019 was a bit of a whirlwind, which has really been this spearhead that put us towards our focus on the volunteers and spending time training and mentoring the volunteers as much as we do with our surfers. So when Fiona and I were doing these sessions, we would literally just, we'd have like a massive quick induction. We would have these groups and teams, and we knew where we wanted to go, but every time we would wrap up, we'd go, geez, we could really do this better next time. And that's where, for us, it got to the point where we realized, all right, here we need to formulate the strategy, we need to implement the strategy, and it needs to be a strategy that is consistently happening to build and retain volunteers. Fiona, I don't know if you want to add anything about 2019.
No, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head. What I do want to say is that it almost feels like we did two very different programs. It was very exciting to do the big group, very exciting to have new people, because there's always that constant energy. There's a lot of feedback, and it feels thrilling, and also you feel almost more successful because you have big numbers to work with. But it was quite stressful trying to manage all of the bits and pieces that go with that, and making sure that everybody was safe. So I think it was a good place to start from, but it definitely helped us make the strategy moving forward.
So then it sounds like, so at first you had these larger groups, 20 to 30 people, but then you had this huge volunteer base that was showing up. You're coming to the beach, and it's like, okay, like, how do we make this more smooth? So then at what point, so you started in August, at what point, how far in did you guys get before you're like, okay, let's do this better some other way? Like, how far down the road did you get before you realized that, like, let's make this a separate program?
We'd only been, I think we did it 6 times, because we did a session once a month, and each time it kept getting bigger and more popular. So that, it was almost snowballing on us. The other challenge was that as much as you ask people to sign up beforehand so you could plan, it didn't work like that. You would literally get to the beach and now have to figure out which of the 70 are going to help which surfer with which challenge. And we have surfers who range from quadriplegia to anxiety and everything in between. So it was a lot of on the spot. Okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, go away, next one. Too much juggling on the beach. When the wind is blowing, no one can hear you. It might be raining, the waves are crashing, everyone's asking questions. It's not the ideal place to do a quick induction.
Totally makes sense. So share with us a little bit. So it sounds like you have a really wide population, like you said, quadriplegic to anxiety. So how do you have special training programs for population based, or do you just have sort of like a general, like, walk us through a little bit? I think, how do you train, like, the ins and outs of that? And I know, Roxy, you said you had a PowerPoint, so if we need to give you the control to drive the bus here and do that, I
would say it was towards the second half of 2019 where we started saying, well, we've got to make sure for the safety of our surfers that our groups and our structure was going to be correctly put in place. And what we did is we put together a specific standard for all of our surf therapy sessions, where we said, some non-negotiables. So for each session, we're going to have a qualified surf coach that is qualified to, internationally, it would be the International Surfing Association. We had accepted or have accepted the Surfing South Africa, which is our South African governing body qualification. And to start, what we've used is we've used the coaches that I have trained myself. So I know that the standard that the training is done, I can put my children in the water, we can put anybody with those guys, and they are really well qualified. Then with each team, we decided to implement a head volunteer, and I'll cover it just now. The head volunteers go through quite a rigorous training program. So theirs is 2 4-hour theory sessions, plus 2 4-hour practical sessions, which are in the water. And then they are working alongside the coach. And what we did is we actually did a bit of a switch in 2020, where the surf coach purely delivers the surfing component of the lesson. The head volunteer focuses on the therapeutic intervention of the lesson. So the volunteer runs our beach theme. So we have a surfers circle, which focuses on a beach theme each week. And the volunteer is the one who is the nurturer, the deliverer of those sessions, and brings the group together. We did a research program recently where we actually had two head volunteers. One ran the beach theme, and then one was in charge of the facilitation of the ocean program, which was making sure that the volunteers in the water were in the right place and the formation was correct, as well as engaging with that head volunteer who was working alongside the coach that was in the water. So your team's got your coach, it's got your head volunteer or 2 head volunteers, and then it has a team of trained volunteers. So this is where we spent this time on induction training for our volunteers, where they attended it was 3 hours of theory, and then a 3-hour practical session, and then the actual real-time sessions. Then those volunteers become your ones that we put in places that are of higher responsibility. And what we try and do from then is to encourage other volunteers to participate, but they are not in a huge responsibility role until they've received training. And then they will be paired up with a trained volunteer. So we've started working and saying, okay, you're new, you're welcome here. You are going to be paired up with this guy until you have had your training. So I think that was one of the biggest things that changed our shift. And each session had a plan, a program. We knew what board we were going to use for each surfer. We knew how many volunteers that surfer needed, if they were going to be in a seated position or a like prone or on their knees. And we've got, as part of our team, in 2019, it was literally just Fiona and I going like, let's just go, let's just go, let's just go. And then in 2020, we said, no, we need a volunteer steering committee. So the foundation has 3 directors on the board, but these directors are really just the overarching kind of guide. But who's really driving the ship? And Ant is on our steering committee. We invited 10 individuals who have really stuck around and have expertise in specific fields. So one of them is Lisa. She's a pediatric neurodevelopmental physiotherapist. She works with our local hospital here. And she developed a surfer ability scale, and it's surfer safety and surfer ability. So we can rate our surfers according to their ability and their safety, which would determine how many volunteers each surfer needs.
That's incredible. So I'm not sure if that's something you're open to sharing with the group, or if that's something, but I just think that's fascinating. You know, like that's which just gives you a tool to plan with, right? It sounds like it's been pretty. And have you found that it has had like good accuracy? Like, okay, I don't know what the scale is, but they're on a 5. That means they need X number of volunteers. Has it been pretty consistent for you to use that scale to develop that team of volunteers?
So what was really interesting is we implemented the scale for the first time this year during the research. And because we were doing the research through like between two COVID waves, the ethics committee in South Africa were very specific around what ability scale according to the groupings that we could have. So we successfully managed to implement it in that, and it worked really well. So that's something that we can definitely share. And what we realized is the scale, it moves both ways. So as a surfer progresses in their surfing journey and they improve, their scale will, their ability and risk will change. So they will have a lower risk and a higher ability, which then would adjust the number of surf coach or volunteers that are needed. So we had, for example, in our first session of the research, a young boy who has no arms and legs, and he had maybe 8 volunteers in the team. Once he got to session 6, his scale had changed. He only needed a coach and 1 volunteer. And then the other way is also true, where you have conditions that are deteriorating and your scale will change the other way.
That's fantastic that you guys have that. So for your participants in your program, how, just walk us briefly through is, I know, because we have just a gamut, you know, we have people doing a 6-week program, a 12-week program. Some people just have a 1 session and that's it. Tell us a little bit about how much advance notice you have for who's showing up, and, you know, the structure of how you're delivering the therapy in terms of number of sessions.
Fiona, maybe you share about the how you get the planning in that.
All right. I'm actually going to shift while I talk because I have an open plan house and they're making a noise. So we use the Google Documents quite a lot to get everybody to sign up. Sorry. We're trying, it's been quite difficult with the COVID stop and starting this year. So we're now starting again for the next 3 months. And basically we ask everybody to sign up. They don't have to sign up for 3 months, but they must sign up for a session and then they can sign up again. We're trying to get a week ahead right now because this 3 months is the first time we're trying to do it every single weekend to get in as many sessions as we possibly can. We're still in the scenario where the volunteers are actually driving the amount of surfers that we can have. So it's a little bit of a juggle. The volunteers seem to be taking a while to get back on board. We're also encouraging everybody to be vaccinated, so it's a little bit slow right now. But that's how we work it out, and we try to confirm all the lessons on the Wednesday before the weekend session, which is a little bit too short for me. I would like it to be 10 days before, but it's just the nature of the game right now. So we've just moved the on the beach juggling to hopefully 4 days prior, and then we can share it with the head volunteers so that they can also look through, okay, this surfer needs 8 volunteers, this surfer has pulmonary issues and or XYZ, whatever, what do they need to know, and make sure it's in place without sharing all the confidential information. So they at least have some time to prepare from a safety level.
Okay, awesome. So it does sound like a little bit of COVID has affected your volunteer base. And I did see on your website, I was really impressed how thorough your intake questionnaire was for your volunteers, even just, you know, like click here, you want to volunteer and fill this whole thing out. And I thought that was spectacular. Just gives you so much knowledge. It's just like, you can't really be prepared enough, it sounds like, but yet there is that element of you just have to be able to kind of free wheel and deal. Would you say though, in general, since you guys implemented this program, some of the headaches the day of, the stressors, you know, do you feel like you and Roxy, or do you guys both feel like it's like, okay, I'm more at ease the day of the event because I put all of this work in on the front end? Is it significantly improved that sort of, I don't know, day of beach anxiety, I guess?
Massively so. So I'm going to share the screen and I can share with you awesome. The training that we've put our volunteers through. And you know what was really amazing with this training as well is that the more training we did, the more skilled the volunteers became, but also the more the volunteers felt they were part of a community, or they do. And they take ownership, they take responsibility, and they keep coming back. So in 2019, Fiona and I felt like if we didn't do it, it was going to fall down. In 2020, we said, okay, we're going to invest time into volunteer training alongside delivering surf therapy. We did that. And now 2021, if I'm not there, it runs. If Fiona's not there, it runs. And we each now take turns. So part of our steering committee, there's 10 of us, and each one takes a turn to lead a session. So we're 100% volunteer driven. In South Africa, operational funding is zero. So we rely entirely on volunteers to be able to deliver the sessions, and the responsibility and ownership that they take over the session and their feeling about being part of this community is what's driving it.
Incredible. And that's great to hear that too, because that's kind of what I feel like that was a conversation Chris and I were kind of having a little bit. So thanks for sharing that. And it looks like the question in the chat box while you're pulling that in. I'm just going to read this. Somebody attached the volunteer intake form. Yes, it is on the website. I will put it in the notes also, Michelle, after and when I send them out in our working group folder.
So we've made it quite, not quite difficult, but this is one of the wonders that we're having in terms of the less involved volunteers. There might be a lot of, we're asking a lot of our volunteers, but if they really want to be part of this journey, they need to be willing to commit. So some volunteers, when they did the training, they were like, wow, that was really long. But then we said, well, listen, you're putting people in the water and you're responsible for them. It needs to be comprehensive. So if you want to be here, you need to be here. So the ones who stayed are really, I guess, the cream that has continued. So I've put just to get some points together. So the first thing we did in 2021 was we put together the steering committee. And that on the steering committee, we've got Ant Smythe, who's here tonight. He's an adaptive world champion. We've got Lisa, who's our specialist. We've got Fiona's on there as operations. I'm on there as a coach. We have a teacher. We have somebody who runs a foundation for individuals with disabilities. And we've got a wide variety and a vast array of expertise. So we put together this steering committee. That was the first thing. Then the second thing we did was we did new volunteer induction training. Day one was theory. So they knew that they were coming. It was 5 modules and it was in a classroom. This was done. We didn't realize how many people would arrive. I think we had like 40 people arrive for this first induction, and we were in a tiny little room pre-COVID, thank goodness. And we went over these things here. So our modules are kind of welcome in an order of events. So just giving an overview of what is surf therapy, our child protection policy, a bit about disability and safeguarding. Then we moved into our next module, and that really was like what to expect. We started doing the Friday sessions with the surf therapy, and then we were doing Sunday sessions. And with Ant's involvement, so our focus is grassroots. We deliver surf therapy clinics for free for anyone in South Africa who has a physical, intellectual, sensory, or cognitive disability. And then Ant's focus is what we call Learn to Turn. And he focuses on getting our grassroots to a national level and an international level. So we've introduced a provincial competition, which is the trials, which goes to the national championships, which selects the team to go to the world championships as well. So it's what to expect. Then module 3 really is how to prepare yourself for the arrival on the beach, on the sessions. What this does is it just gives everybody an understanding of, you're going to come, you're going to be doing this thing, this is how it's going to happen. And we don't have 70 people asking the same questions over and over. Then module 4, this is really difficult to relay in the classroom, but we did transfer it to a practical session where it like finally connects the dots. So we speak about general water safety, briefing the volunteers, how it's going to work, what the signals are going to be, what the volunteer communication is, the no-nos, and then the beach work briefing. So We discuss how to communicate amongst one another, our body language, communicate with individuals, participants and volunteers, and any communication during the sessions. So we talk about those little cues like your body language in the water. How are you projecting your voice? Are you speaking face to face so somebody can see you and hear you, because there's like a lot of noise behind you, and just those small little things. And then we went into the roles per team. So each team, we had said, okay, the hypotheticals are, if you have a high risk surfer, you're going to have a team of 8. This is the formation that you're going to be in. If you are an L1, which is a left catcher, you're going to be on this side and it's going to look like this. If you are an R1, you're going to be here. If you are a catcher at the bottom, you're going to be here and you're going to be doing this. So when you go into the water and they're calling, the head volunteers calling your positions, you're not wondering what you're going to be doing. Then we moved on to bringing it all together, which was quite nice. So we take them down to the beach, the volunteers, and we group them into different teams on the beach. So we have 4 beach wheelchairs. We have 4 surfboards, we have chairs on the beach, and then each head volunteer runs a team. And then the Lisa, our specialist, will rotate between them. So we had 2 specialists on our practical training. And for the first part of the session, it really was observations that the volunteers could watch. So they could watch how you get the mobility chair down to the beach, how they do the transfers, the various different ways that surfers would be seated or in the lying position. And then from that observation, the teams then get broken down, and then some of the surfers become, some volunteers become the actual surfers. So we'll swap, we'll have the volunteers in the beach chair, and other volunteers will have the opportunity to practice those transfers. Now, the beauty here is that there's a lot of mistakes that happen, and thank goodness you can do these things in practice, because you don't want to be making those mistakes when you're on a surf therapy day. So we've had instances where you've done like difficult twists or drops, or, you know, they didn't quite land on the surfboard, they landed on their face in the sand. And then we realized, okay, you know, bring it back, what went right, what went wrong, and then we redo. And it's interesting because the application of this, so many people were fearful about the transfers and how do I do it, and am I going to be in the way? And then when they actually got to be part of the team and somebody naturally steps forward and then the group happens, it all just flows very easily. Then we moved into what we call the beach practical session, which was that practically applying it. And then this was something that Ant had suggested we did, and it's worked so well. We did a surf-like session. So we blindfolded half the team. They had to become the surfers. We tied up some surfers' legs, some of their arms. We made different scenarios for each person. And what was quite interesting, especially with the visual impairments, when Michelle is one of our volunteers, she's also a visually impaired surfer, and she's actually going to the World Champs this year. She comes down as a volunteer and she gives us her goggles, which are literally painted black with pinholes. And the volunteers then get to wear the goggles and then surf like Michelle. And it's quite interesting because they are learning to understand the cues of, I can't hear the team. There's a lot of noise. I can hear the anxiety or the nervousness or the chaos that's going on. And then when we do our feedback session on the surf like, the volunteers have the opportunity to relay that feedback to the rest of the team to say, listen, nobody was in charge there. You were all anxious. I felt nervous. I didn't like that at all. So there's an opportunity to practice and revert and give feedback. Also, when the surfers are in the water and their legs are tied up and they fall over and they land up in the water, you can say, listen, guys, you didn't get to me fast enough. Like, you need to be doing, X, Y, and Z. So that was really helpful. And this is just an induction. So it's 6 hours, 3 hours in theory and 3 hours on the beach. This first part, we've actually managed to adapt to get online as well. So we can do part 1 online and then part 2 on the beach. For our head volunteers, it was a lot longer in terms of the session. We looked at So now what has happened is obviously the ISA have delivered or have created the adaptive surf instructor course, and attending that course, it is definitely for a head volunteer or for a coach. It's not for like a light version induction. So before the ISA brought the course out, we did our like an internal course, and the first day we focused on with the head volunteers. We had about 25 head volunteers on these courses. It covers just surf therapy, adaptive surfing, the admin side, communication, each of the roles, and then safety. Day 2 is equipment, beach instruction, participation in the water, transfers, conditions and considerations. We talk about competition because obviously the head volunteers now are bridging between head volunteer and a little bit of a coach, and they are helping the national surfers in their training. Then they also go through a surf like with beach transfers and feedback. And then day 4 is the actual surf therapy day. So this is the day where we have a big group. There's 10 participants on the beach, and your head volunteers now take lead. So then like if Fiona and Roxy step back, so we're there to support, but the head volunteers start to step up, and then they have the opportunity to lead the induction or the new volunteers, the inexperienced volunteers, work alongside the coach, and then provide feedback. So those are the 2 training sessions that we did. Then the other one we did, which was quite interesting, and this one we ran for, it was about 18 surf coaches. The surf coaches, what we realized was surf coaches know how to coach. They are experienced in the water, no questions asked on that. They have had their training, they have had their first aid, but there was a disconnect between surf coaching and surf therapy or adaptive surfing. So the surf coach was almost, we found they were feeling like they were going to run the session, but they didn't have the understanding that the volunteer was there on their own accord, giving their time, that the participant was not an able-bodied surfer. So we had to try and introduce a way to have the head coach and the surf coach work together. So we ran these sessions. It was 5 1-hour online sessions. I presented one of the sessions, so that was my kind of introduction. Sean, he's the head coach and mentor at Surf Emporium, and he brought the team in to participate. Fiona ran the admin side of it, so the logistics of what to know, what to do, where to be and how to be there. Then we introduced a lady named Madri. She's from the Altitude group, and she's an occupational therapist who works with adults with disabilities. She was amazing because she spoke about disability inclusion, not just in surf therapy, but in the workplace and the day-to-day lives of individuals. And she just really kind of brought to the coaches, just like connected this understanding of what surf therapy is. Then we had an hour session with Lisa. She focused on transfers and the theoretical side of the responsibility. I think it was really just getting across, hey, you are seriously responsible for these guys in the water. And then we had a really awesome last session, which was with Ant, and he just shared his experiences around what it's like to be an adaptive surfer and then be on the steering committee and involved with surf therapy. So it was 5 1-hour sessions, and you can actually break these down into, different once a week if you wanted to. And it just looked like that. So we ran 9 to 10, 15, session 1. In one day, it was a really long day, but you can break them down. We did session 2, session 3, session 4, and session 5. So that was a really cool way to be able to deliver an online course that is not a technical. At the end of this course, you wouldn't be able to deliver a surf therapy lesson or adaptive lesson, but you have a far deeper understanding of what it's about in all contexts. I hope I'm making sense.
This is great. Thank you so, so much.
Okay. Then the next thing we did was in June, end of June, we decided to take it a step further, and we put all our head coaches that we had now trained onto an SSA, which is Surfing South Africa Level 1 Surf Coaches course. So our thinking behind what we were doing, our method to our madness, was because we don't get funding really from anywhere. We've got 2 funders who help us with operational support. We've got some corporate funding for equipment, but we don't have anything. I mean, in dollar terms, it's like teeny weeny. I think if we get $1,000 a month for operational expenses, it's a lot. So we've had to figure out how we can do it. So we got funds for training, and I delivered the SSA course training. And what we did here is we put our 18 head volunteers on a surf coaches course, and that would allow us to bridge the gap that the surf coach and the head volunteer becomes one and the same. So you could have 2 head volunteers. One would be a head volunteer and one would be a coach, and they could have a dual role. And this way we can afford then our volunteers become our coaches, which makes it a little bit more sustainable in terms of delivering a session. So the SSA course, it runs very similarly to the ISA course. We do the role of the coach, safety of the surfers, venue analysis, instruction methods, skills development. It's a 2-day online theory. So two evenings, we ran it over the evenings, and then 1 afternoon of a full practical. And then alongside that, what we've decided to do was invest in a first aid course for all of those head volunteers that are also surf coaches now. And they are doing a 4-hour first aid course, which is CPR and water emergencies. This is everything that it covers in there. And they're actually there's a group that is doing it this Saturday morning. So they're just building on the foundation and just continue to build. So now what we've got is a team that have gone through the induction, a really entrenched team of head volunteers who are now able to be surf coaches, who will also do their first aid, which will have that further safety. And then we've paired up, or we've partnered with Cape Medical Response, which is our local first responders, and they've given us a preferential rate for first response on the beach as well. So in terms of safety, we have our first aid, our coaches our volunteers will be our first responders, and then we have this medical assistance as well. And then we've decided to take it a step further, and we're putting our steering committee, which is the 10 of them, onto a basic life support first aid course. So the steering committee are the guys who, if we have 11 sessions coming up, there's 10 of us. Each one of us are going to take a turn to host and run one of the upcoming surf therapy sessions. And then the understanding is that the one who's running it is going to have a basic life support qualification under their belt, as well as the head main first responder. So yeah, that's pretty much us in a nutshell. And that's how we've focused on investing in our volunteers to come back, feel part of the community. And really, we've needed far less volunteers this way because they are far more skilled and trained.
So incredible. I feel like you're like, but wait, I thought of one more thing, and I'm going to add another, like your dedication to thoroughness is just incredible. I just was curious if you guys have like a percentage roughly like of retention for, I mean, you were putting so much to them, like how many volunteers do you see just keep coming back, season after season for you guys at this point?
So in terms of the head volunteers, we had, or the community that we've invested in now, we ran in June, July, this research where we had, I think it was like 40 volunteers. So we had 40 volunteers that committed 6 consecutive Fridays to surf therapy. and they came back week on week. Our head volunteers are there and they're committed, so that there's about 20 of them. The one thing Fiona and I have had a challenge with right now is the stop and the start. We don't know quite yet if it has been a rigorous intake procedure, if it's the request for vaccinations to participate. But we've noticed in the last, I'd say 2 weeks, because we've started up again, we had to take a 2-month pause. We haven't had a influx of uptake of volunteers, if that makes sense. So they're all still there, but they haven't jumped on to join the next session.
Interesting. Well, and yeah, it's like I noticed on your website too, how you kind of talk about like we're getting these in before the 4th COVID wave. And yeah, it's tough. The COVID definitely throws a wrench. You don't really know, like, what is it? Curious on the transfers. Sorry, this is going back a little ways because I'm a PT by profession. I was super interested. So do you have Lisa teaching that part of your training program? And have you heard, and this is, my background is that I'm always looking to help healthcare not be burnt out. And I've been trying to figure out how do we work surf therapy into something for our healthcare providers. So that's a little selfish side note, but do you find that has she given feedback about how she feels now getting out of hospital setting and being able to come out and do this part with you guys? Has she given any feedback about her experience with being a PT and has this made her feel a little bit less burnt out or able to tolerate more of her other work?
So what's interesting is she says that her surf therapy days are the days that she looks forward to rejuvenate. So out of the hospital and into the ocean has been the thing that fills her cup. And it's amazing because it's her time that she's giving over the weekend, over and above what she's doing in the hospital. And even with her, her daughters at home, she's still giving up time, but she just said it gives her energy and it fills her cup to see the kids and the adults participate.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah. I wanted to share with you just a structure overview quickly. Can I share again? Let me just see. Hoping this is going to be able to share. So this is very like rough notes, sorry. So in the research, what we did was we had land volunteers. So each of them knew what their role was. We had our specialists. So this is like Susanna, she's the operations on the beach. We had Lisa, who was the practitioner, a second practitioner, and then a sports physiotherapist, specialist, and safety officer. And then we run our team. So each team has its participant, the individual, the details of the individual. Just the volunteers don't need to know too much detail, just basics. And then each name. So it'll be Adam, he's the coach. Camilla, she's the head volunteer. Carolina, she's volunteer 2. Chris is a session companion, and then waterside 1. This is what I was saying, L1, R1, and then a catcher. So left side, right side, and then the catcher is the one that's in the front. And then it goes all the way down. So depending on the number of, depending on the participant and their impairment, we would have a different grouping of volunteers. And this is how we ran. So that we would run these ones, for example, it's 9 participants, and that's from 1 until 4. So it's 3 hours, 3 teams, 9 participants. And then your experts are over here in the top. So each one has a coach, it's got its head volunteers, and then their particular roles. So one thing we realized, which made such a difference, was the session companion was so massive for us, and we hadn't introduced this prior to this year, that the rapport and the trust that our participant has with the session companion is so important for nurturing that relationship. And then the session companion introduces them to the wider volunteer group. And what we've noticed now is that the participants, I was saying to Fiona, the participants are learning so much from the volunteers, about how much unconditional love and support that those volunteers are giving to the surfers, we're noticing that the surfers are actually learning to emulate that in their environments outside of surfing. So some of our young kids are going back to school and they are able to transfer that love and care to their teachers and their friends. And those are things that have happened through the nurturing of the small changes, like the companion that builds the trust with the community, the surfer circle that has a theme that they talk about, I am feeling, or surfing makes me feel like this, or today we did this. And all of that is showing so many new things that we didn't anticipate by creating structure and improving the training framework for our volunteers.
There's always these unexpected extra benefits that come right out of it. One more question. When you showed that last screenshot, how are you communicating? What have you found works best for communication with your volunteer base? Do they get, like, for instance, I'm sure they get that little spreadsheet so they know what's up, or are you emailing? Do you have a port? Like, how does that work for just, logistics wise? Like, what's the best way for you guys to communicate with them?
So Fiona and I have like 100 WhatsApp groups between the two of us. But each event, we've created a WhatsApp group per event. And then on the WhatsApp group, we will just send a simple screenshot. So it's the responsibilities, who the participants are, what the roles are for the day, and the order of events. And then we have a private WhatsApp group, which is our core group. And that's where all our ICE information goes. So in case of emergencies, all the volunteer contacts, their medical information, their next of kin, and then the surfers. So the surfers' impairments, their contacts, their emergency details. So none of that information ever gets shared with the volunteer team that's joining. They just need to know where they need to be and who's in the team. But behind the scenes, all the operational stuff like that gets shared on the core group. So we share that responsibility.
Excellent. Well, that was just amazing. I am so floored how in depth, and I'm sure there's other people here who may have questions. If you're open, we have about 10 minutes left to do just a little Q&A. So if anybody has anything they want to ask, go ahead and just raise your hand or unmute. Nobody? You are so thorough. Okay. Do you happen to have, if anybody's not going to come off mute to ask a question, I do have one more. The scale that you mentioned, the disability and the surfer scale, is that by chance something you have that you could just quick screenshot with us or screen share with us on that?
Yeah, let me just see. Actually, where did I download it now?
No pressure. Find that file. No, just kidding.
You know what? I actually put it all together today in a screenshot, and then when I moved my, I'm gonna have
while you're looking for it, I just want to add that part of all of this training is also to encourage sort of to close the feedback loop. So you can't do your next session unless you understand what happened on that session. So we've been asking for a lot of feedback at every single session so that we can work out what is the best way forward. So even from, for example, these sessions in the next 3 months, we're being really strict about the low tide and surfing not more than 2 hours after low tide. And that was feedback from the volunteer group to make sure that they felt comfortable with the safety levels of each of their surfers. So it's important for us to understand what they need, but you get much better feedback when they are trained and understand all the responsibilities that are involved in delivering that surf therapy session. So that has been quite useful. Of course, getting feedback out on a piece of paper is a whole different story. So back to the WhatsApp group, if people just leave voice messages to say, this is what they felt or did, you know, then I sit and record them somewhere else. So that's how we do that.
I'd like to just add to that, the webinar we had yesterday, which featured a physical therapist and an occupational therapist. To your point, Fiona, that was another topic that was brought up, is individually the surf therapy programs, that is the founders, and then of course you've got staff and you've got lead volunteers, really taking on the, I guess, the ownership of knowing when to say no and what's in your wheelhouse and what is safe, not just for the participants, but all of the volunteers as well. So Fiona, I really love that, because you're right. Some of our programs, as Shane mentioned, are one-day programs. So we're like eager to be out there all of the time and not get back in if we don't have to. But the truth is there are safety considerations. And I mean, when it's low tide and everybody's wiping out and, you know, purling and getting thrown over, that could potentially be, of course, causing more anxiety and stress. And that's the last thing that we want to be doing. So yeah, I love that point. Roxy, I see that you found what you were looking for. I'll stop talking.
And I have a question whenever you're done, Roxy.
Yeah. I'll answer now.
My question was, I know you said that you guys are hosting some of those more basic classes online. Would you be willing to open that up to members of this working group to maybe attend?
Absolutely. We, so Ant and I were actually talking about it because in South Africa, we're based in Cape Town, and we've got a similar type organization, which is just down the road, well, in Durban, a flight away. And they would also benefit from exactly the same thing as we're teaching kind of our community here. So absolutely, the more people who could benefit from sharing the information, we're absolutely up to that.
Okay, maybe I'll just reach out.
Yeah.
Website or email or whatever.
Yeah, you can email. WhatsApp's always great for us. Another WhatsApp or email is perfect.
Okay.
So this is the scale that we've used. This was part of the research. I found it on my research document. So it's the surface safety level, and we've gone SS level 1, which is low risk, medium risk, high risk. Low risk needs coach and volunteer and 2 catches, needs coach volunteer 4 catches, and then needs coaches more volunteers at the board. So Lisa put together some physical characteristics that are part of the risk, and then some psychosocial, so understanding the risks, impulsivity, jumping off the board, those type of things. And then ability scale, she's put up here. So standing on the board is surfer ability level 1, kneeling is level 2, seated in a fixed seat is level 3, prone 4, and then seated with a volunteer. So we call our seated volunteer, we call it a human chair. And part of our training is how to train the team to be that chair. I know in some of the surf therapy sessions that others have, is they've got like a really long supboard and they've got a chair that's mounted to the board. For us, we don't have that. So we've actually developed a technique to be a chair. And there's some simple things. It's quite exhausting being the chair. So there's support that we train in to support the chair position that supports the surfer. I hope that helps.
That's amazing. Hey, I'm sorry, Shane, really quickly. I would love to hear from Ant. Ant, don't go away. And if you don't know Ant, well, you all should know Ant. Champion, we love you, Ant. And I actually didn't know that you were doing all of this work alongside Roxy. But Ant, what's your experience, not just as a competitor, as a champion? I love all of that, but then also seeing this side of it, which of course is the therapeutic side, or meant to be the therapeutic side. Thoughts? And good to see you, Ant.
Yeah, good to see you, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so it's so rewarding, you know. I'm not really good at this organizational structure and arranging surf days. So my solution for that was to go and find excellent people who can do that properly. and Roxy's one of them. So I guess what happened with me, my journey was when we went to 2015 to the World Champs. We were encouraged to go back to our own countries and start adaptive surfing in those countries. So we had a few days, and I dabbled a bit, and I wasn't really good at it. And then I approached Roxy, who had, one of the best surf schools in the country. She was 9-time South African surfing champion, and she had the credentials. And I just planted a seed, and then she's run with it, and it's actually left me so far behind. I feel a little bit overwhelmed with what's happening right now, but at the same time, very proud, that that she's in touch with you guys, and that in South Africa we are on a world level. That yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I'm just really happy that this is happening.
Well, thanks so much for, I guess you were a part of the ISTO collaboration in 2018 in Jeffreys Bay, and it was so great to have you there. But this understanding that we are really better together, and there is this idea of, whoa, all of these minds, and we can achieve as much as we want to achieve. ISTO has always been about promoting program standards, better practices, ethics, and risk management, and having these exact kinds of conversations. And rich sharing is just one way that the programs can raise the bar without reinventing the wheel. So Roxy had reached out very early on to ISTO and said, hey, putting together this super cool thing. So Rob, to your question, I'm actually going to be working with Roxy and Fiona to actually put together kind of a masterclass so that we can get some donations for Roxy Foundation, because this took this talk about bringing together an entire village to put something like so thoughtful and so effective. ISTO is getting ready to put together a 3-year study. The expected impact of this research will inform the development of an ISTO training course. Roxy, you don't know that yet, but you're going to be a part of that. It's intended to strengthen surf therapy organizations' ability to implement effective interventions and really contribute to the culture of health and in diverse international communities. But again, it's the sharing. We got this Cliff Notes version, right? You guys do a 2-day training, and we had 55 minutes with you. There's so much more that goes into it, and we want to, shoot some love out to you guys and really put together like a master class. And this very much will probably be a part of the ISTO training ultimately. So yeah, thanks, Shane. Sorry, I just had to say, love you, Roxy, Fiona.
Yeah, I so appreciate it. This is so informative. We're kind of at the top of the hour, so wrap it up. But I think like my overall feeling is like, any business, any nonprofit, the idea is that it is going to run itself in infinity without you, whether you're there or not. And I definitely feel like you have created this system and like really been so thoughtful, like to mitigate risk for your participants, for your volunteers, for your own mental health, to be able to keep doing this, right? Because we don't want to see our programs that are, becoming, getting bigger, get burnt out either, right? Because we need surf therapy. So I think, looking at it from, I'm sure this was just a tremendous amount of work, and I'm sure it's a work that will continue to evolve, but I'm blown away. So thank you so much. I don't know if anybody has any last minute thoughts. Otherwise, I think we'll probably sign off here.
Anybody?
All right.
Well, thanks again, Shane. Thanks for running this and putting it together. Roxy, Fiona, and thanks for the work you're doing in South Africa. It's so incredible to know, surf therapy is thriving, and it's programs like yours that are raising the bar for all of us, because there is this, we just want to get out there and bring people out there, and we know that it is therapeutic. Being in nature is therapeutic. Being on a surfboard is therapeutic. There are benefits to it, but when we have more considerations, certainly for safety measures, probably we absolutely are reducing less triggers, less anxiety, less stress, because the last thing surf therapy programs want to do is increase anxiety and stress because of being unfamiliar with some of the techniques that you talked about today. So thanks again. I know it's late in South Africa. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. Ben, good seeing you. Nathan, Rob, I didn't know you had a puppy. Michelle, we didn't even get to see you, but thanks for being here, Michelle. Thanks, everybody. Shane, you rock. Oh, hi,
Thank
bud.
you.
Daniel.
Hi, everyone.
Charger. Daniel, the Charger. Charger right there.
Chris, I didn't get a chance to tell you, we're actually, I'm in year 2 of my master's, looking at surf therapy. So exploring the experiences of participation in a surf therapy program. And we are just busy in the process of upgrading it to a PhD. So we're going to, yeah. I'm
What?
presenting to the board next week.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Look at
We'll
you.
have a-
Well, of course.
We'll have a
Of course
Cape Town.
Yes, congratulations. That's huge. You know, none of us that are on this call need the science, but the truth is, in order to move the needle, we do need the data. We do need research. We do need more, you know, academic journals out there who want to take on and support the research out there. And of course, hello, these PhD candidates in surf therapy. Are you kidding? This is amazing. Roxy, congratulations. That's huge.
So we've realized that with the surf therapy and all we're doing, exactly like you say, we need to underpin it with evidence-based data, and this is the way to do it. So we're hoping that we can, in our little town in Cape Town, Muizenberg, we can contribute in some way to the bigger picture.
Oh, that's huge. And I hope that anytime you want or need a chat with Jamie, who I think he just went and made his pitch, right? So he had to, of course, defend his thesis about why a PhD in surf therapy is valid. And I think he just pitched it. Either that or it's coming up. But I think he has to go pitch it. Oh, actually it is. It's at the end of this month. So he'll go defend it. And assuming, you know, not too many arguments come back, he will actually receive that PhD in surf therapy. So Roxy, I mean, so stoked. And more
So-
girls. Sorry, boys. We love you, boys, but good. That's awesome. Congratulations, Roxy. That's huge.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to reach out to you and Fiona about this masterclass. Thanks so much, everybody. Shane, you
I gotta
rock.
go, but love you
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.